evening. My name is Tarryn. I am a painter, a dancer, and a law graduate specializing in human rights. In 2012, I graduated with my master's on the right of access to healthcare services for survivors of gender-based violence, and I am currently wrapping up my doctorate in family law. During my studies, I have come to realize just how interconnected gender-based violence and family law are. And tonight, I would like to tell you a story to illustrate this interconnection. Before we get to that, though, I would like to tell you a secret. I have been on this stage before. Many moons ago, I was performing in a dancing I did on this stage, and I was about 3/4 through my dance when I tripped and I fell. But I got up and I carried on dancing. I finished my entire dance. As a friend told me, I've already taken one leap on the stage, and tonight I would like to take another one. Tonight I would like to tell you a story about the girl on the moon. In our story, the young girl falls in love for the first time. She feels that special spark that grasps your heart. And while there is something magical about the way people fall in love, there is also a darker side to many relationships. It is on this darker, heavier side of love that I would like to shine a light. In our story, the young girl breaks up with her boyfriend after he becomes violent. This is where the story should end, but it doesn't. After they break up, he begins harassing her. He taunts her, calling her a slut and a whore. He threatens her. He follows her. The biggest shock, though, is the response she receives from her community. She is told that it is her fault. I would like you to imagine living alone in a tiny house on the moon. I would like you to imagine being surrounded by utter darkness, knowing that if you called for help, no one would hear you, and no one would help you. I would like you to envision looking down your telescope on all the people on Earth. I think that this image is powerful because it captures the intense isolation that many women who experience gender-based violence feel. The United Nations Committee has described gender-based violence as violence that is directed against a woman because she is a woman, or violence that affects women disproportionately. In most stories like this one about the girl on the moon, she would end up murdered. She would become another statistic. And it is in situations like these that violence becomes normalized and accepted in our society. These norms are perpetuated in the everyday language that we use. For example, women are told to watch their drink. Women are told to not walk alone to their car at night. Women are often told to not get a restraining order. The media will often report on the rape survivor who was wearing revealing clothing. And in everyday conversations with friends, we will often ask why the abused girlfriend didn't leave her boyfriend before he killed her. We do not ask why rape is so prevalent in our society, and we do not ask why men kill women. And we do not ask how clothing can ever justify such extreme violence and cruelty. As the brave woman involved in the naked protest at Rhodes University argued, do not tell women what to wear. Tell men not to rape. Tonight, I will be presenting a case to you, made up of facts, opinions, and personal experiences relating to gender-based violence. While I will not be asking you to remove any of your clothing, I will be asking you to reflect on your own story and to consider how you see yourself playing a role in changing the story. When I was younger, in seeking to define my own story, I sought out strong female role models. And so I fell in love with the world of female superheroes. I particularly fell in love with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. One reason for my love for Buffy is that while most stories from my childhood focused on a young woman finding her Prince Charming and living happily ever after, Buffy had a destiny. Buffy was the chosen one. When Buffy experiences domestic violence, she stands up to it. There is one scene in particular that stands out to me. In this scene, her boyfriend fights her and disarms her. He taunts her, saying, "No weapons, no friends, no hope. What's left?" As he lunges at her, Buffy grabs the sword, stops him, looks him dead in the eye, and responds, "Me." This resonated with me because it offered a very different kind of story from what I was used to seeing. Buffy changed the narrative. Buffy was everything that I wanted to see in the world. Instead, what we see is that globally, gender-based violence kills and disables as many women between the ages of 15 and 44 as cancer. In spite of this, it remains underdocumented, underreported, and neglected. In 2012, the Medical Research Council released a report that showed that every 8 hours, a woman is murdered by her intimate partner. That equates to 3 women a day. Rape homicides increase every year in this country. And during the period of 2014 and 2015, just over 43,000 sexual offences were reported to the South African police services. In terms of the monthly reported sexual offences, that equates to 7 times the number of people in this theatre tonight. If one considers that sexual offences are notoriously underreported, this is an unacceptably high statistic. In South Africa, there are other forms of gender-based violence, such as female genital mutilation, for which there are currently no reliable statistics. This has rendered these crimes invisible in our society. If I ask you, though, who here saw the moon last night? Show of hands. So judging by the number of hands, we can conclude that the moon does exist. Just because some of you didn't see it doesn't mean that it no longer exists. Gender-based violence is somewhat similar. Just because you don't see it every day doesn't make it any less real. While the story about the girl on the moon may sound unique, it is all too common in our society. And while our society has evolved over recent decades, many of our laws have not evolved enough to be responsive to survivors of gender-based violence. One example of how the legal regime has perpetuated gender inequality is the ancient Roman Dutch rule relating to marital power. This rule established the husband as the head of the family and gave him the power to discipline his wife through the use of physical force. Marital rape was also legal in South Africa up until 1992. The rule relating to marital power was finally abolished in 1993. What is surprising is that currently South Africa has a progressive legislative framework that appears conducive to addressing gender-based violence. For example, we have the very progressive Domestic Violence Act, which provides for a broad definition of domestic violence and allows women to obtain a protection order. These innovative measures will remain ineffective, though, without proper budgeting, implementation, and a multi-sectoral response between healthcare providers, court officials, and police officials. Healthcare providers also need to be trained to screen for domestic violence. Another example is Section 28 of the current Sexual Offences Act. This provision provides that a survivor of rape may receive post-exposure prophylaxis, which prevents the transmission of HIV, but goes on to state that this is subject to the survivor reporting the rape at a police station or at a designated health establishment. There may, however, be numerous reasons as to why a woman may be reluctant to report a rape. One reason may be if she is raped by her intimate partner. She may be afraid of escalating violence. It is often when women try to leave an abusive relationship or when they report violence that they are most in danger of escalating violence. A woman may also be reluctant to imprison the only breadwinner of the family. And there may be socio-economic reasons as to why a woman in a rural area is unable to access a designated health establishment. When a woman does report a rape to a healthcare provider or a police official, Officials should be trained to refrain from automatically suggesting that women sort it out privately. Officials should try to create a safe space to allow women to feel protected. One thing that we can all do is listen. The next time a woman or a girl, whether it's your sister or your girlfriend, tells you that she felt afraid, harassed, or uncomfortable due to a man's behavior, just listen. Listen to what she has to say without assigning blame to her, her behavior, or her clothing. If one considers that gender-based violence tends to be transferred intergenerationally through the family, then we also need to take a closer look at how we are structuring our family law regime and how we interact within our own families. The next time you are sitting around the dinner table with your family, try to be more conscious about the gender norms that come up in the everyday conversation. The way that a husband or a father treats his wife is teaching his daughter what to expect from men. It is also teaching his son how to treat women. A few months after learning all of this and graduating, I went on a date with a guy. When I told him about the work that I was interested in doing and that I was a feminist, he looked at me quizzically and said, "But I thought you were a nice girl." I didn't know that standing up for gender equality meant that I was no longer a nice girl. I mean, it's not like I joined some horrible, violent girl gang. I just wanted to do something to help the girl on the moon. And I do personally dream of a society where both men and women will feel safe and valued. In order to do this, though, we need to infuse more state and social institutions with a gender perspective. This is because men and women still have different needs and experiences. Many of these differences are due to the different gender roles we are still expected to take on. Men are still expected to be masculine providers, and women are still expected to be nurturing caregivers. While difference is not the problem, it's the disadvantage that we attach to this difference. It's the idea of hierarchy instead of collaboration. So for those of you in the audience who feel alone on your moon, or who have felt alone on your moon, I have a special message for you. In the words of Winnie the Pooh, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Most importantly, you are not alone. During my studies, I have come to realize that we are not powerless to address gender-based violence in our society. Each and every one of us here can reflect on the gendered relations of which we are a part. This is necessary, as unless we change legal and social institutions to be more responsive to survivors of gender-based violence, we are going to be exacerbating their suffering and perpetuating the cycle of violence in our society. So based on everything that you have heard tonight, based on everything that you have seen, here's the part where you give your verdict. Knowing that you have the power to change the story and to make sure that the girl on the moon does not become another statistic, what are you going to do differently from tonight to make sure that we pass on a different story to the next generation? My name is Tarryn. I'm a painter, a dancer, and I know what it feels like to be a girl on the moon. I still believe in the moon and the stars, but I also love kickboxing.